Hey everybody, welcome back to the Be Your Own Hero podcast. I'm your host, Brittany Renew, and I am back doing a little recap episode of what I learned from our most recent interview with Kasey Brennan. I loved having Kasey on because she, as a certified Enneagram coach and being someone that's been in the creative world for so long, it was so cool to kind of hear her journey and to really get into the specifics around things that hold us back. And as you know, I'm a big believer in facing those things head on, taking action and trying to get unstuck. I've spent so much of my life stuck and overcoming limiting beliefs. And I am so proud of that work that I have done. And I just want to stay on that journey and encourage other people to join me on that journey so that we can all be our own heroes and become the best version of ourselves. And it's good to remember that it's a process. You're never arriving. So embracing the journey, enjoying the journey, being present. And Kasey and I talked about that, being present. It's so important. And it's really easy to get caught up in the next thing. So remembering to take time to be proud of how far you've come. And she talked about an exercise of, going out to be in nature, spending about 2 hours, pick some really beautiful spot somewhere that you can just completely let go of everything. She recommended leaving your phone in your car. And when she talked about that, I was like, oh, wow, that sounds like something we all need to do. And that would be such a great way to really be present. It's so often that we are, glued to our phones. It's so often that we are completely distracted by technology and all these different notifications and, you name it, email, social media, whatever. And when we can take the time to really be present, and whether that's with ourselves and with other people, and I think both are important. We will hear people talk about how important it is to be present with your loved ones, and that is very important. But I don't think we talk enough about just being present with ourselves. So that was what really hit home for me when Kasey talked about the exercise. Is it's so easy to be distracted, even just with ourselves. We're taking a walk, you're listening to music or a podcast, and not that there's anything wrong with that, but think about it on the opposite end. What if you were just present with yourself? What if you were just there enjoying nature, really being aware of your surroundings, and then being able to process how you're feeling, able to maybe work through some different issues and things that are going on in your life because you're present. I actually do that quite often when I do walk. I don't have music or podcasts that I'm listening to so that I can be present. And it really does. I have found that it's helped me process a lot of different emotions. And of course, being out in nature is scientifically proven to lift your mood. So highly recommend that. And it can be hard, when the weather's not great, maybe where you are, you're dealing with snow and cold. And I understand that can be a challenge, but just finding some way to be in nature, and because there's definitely a connection to nature that helps us really recenter ourselves, has that. It's a mood lifter. It definitely is. Of course, especially the sun, for sure. We talked a little bit about the stories that we tell ourselves. And I think that's, at the heart of what she does with Enneagram coaching, is really digging into the stories that we're telling ourselves. And as I'm Enneagram 2, talked about that in the episode. As an Enneagram 2, I'm definitely going to hold on to that idea of, I want to be there to help everyone, anyone and everyone. And it's going to be at the detriment of myself in some of those cases. So being aware of that is always the first step. So being aware that as a 2, I'm more prone to want to help and serve others, to the extent of not taking care of myself, and, at that detriment of my own well-being. So being aware that I can have that tendency helps me make a different choice in those situations. So that's a lot of the work that the Enneagram provides, is really digging down into those motivating factors of like, why am I doing this? Why do I keep going back to do this type of thing? Why am I getting stuck in this mindset, in this perspective? So by having that awareness around that, you can start to take steps to change that. Journaling always helps, just sitting down and processing through those emotions of, I keep going back to this. So I'll choose an example from my own life. I am having a day where a migraine hits me out of nowhere. And I know it's because I have pushed too hard in trying to, serve others well, run my business, and not taking time to slow down and take care of myself. So by me being really aware of that, I can process that and say, okay, this is happening, and how can I make a different choice? How can I recognize the red flags that my body is trying to send me before I get to that point, before I get actually sick and ill? I'm like in the bed for a whole day, or get really ill and you're down for a week with the flu or something like that. Like, how can I catch those red flags beforehand so I can stop and make sure that I am taking time for myself? We talked about really taking the time to fill your cup up so that you can actually serve people in the best way. Because ultimately, I think, we all want that. Whatever your motivations are, ultimately, we're all out there trying to do the best that we can. We're all out there wanting to serve other people well and be a good person in the world, try to make the world a better place. And so those are all really noble things. But unfortunately, sometimes we put that ahead of our own selves. And what she talked about, the example of just taking the thing that will fill your cup up and making sure to prioritize that. Kasey shared an example of going to the Sundance Film Festival because that's her background. And so being able to sit there and have like a whole day or weekend, whatever it is, where she was really in that world that she loved so much, it filled her cup up to the brim. So when she goes back home to her family, to her clients, she's able to be the best version of herself. And I can attest to that. For me, I would say Disney plays a big role in that. So I'm a Disney annual pass holder, and I will schedule a day where I head over to the parks and spend the whole day, just drive over, drive back, spend the whole day in the park. And because that's like my happy place, it really does fill my cup up. And so when I come back, even though it's just one day, so I took one day out of my schedule and did that, but the return on that is huge because I come back and I am filled and I am ready to go back and tackle my business goals. I'm ready to be the best wife and friend that I can, all of those things. So I can definitely speak from experience by slowing down enough to take that time and do something that you're passionate about is absolutely huge. It's really, really impactful. For such a long time, I did feel guilt around doing those things that I loved, with like taking a trip, going to Disney, taking some time out to hang out with some girlfriends, go to lunch, specifically writing. With me having released the book, writing is a huge part of my life. And for so long, I put that to the side because I just felt guilt around spending time doing that. And that's been such a big learning for me in the last year or so, is I have that all backwards. By taking a day, a couple hours, whatever that is, to do the thing that I'm passionate about, that return is tenfold that, because I'm showing up better in my life for the people that I love and the people that I'm trying to serve. And I also think it helps just reset mentally, because often when we have these goals goals for our life, and specifically just talking about business, these goals that we set, they can be big, they can be scary. And I think taking time for yourself, filling up your cup, also helps flip that mindset and that perspective. And it puts those goals in a different light. And it takes some of the pressure off and the weightiness off of those goals so that you can tackle those on a piece by piece. The old saying about how do you eat an elephant, one bite at a time. I mean, that's kind of the concept here is we can get so wrapped up in what our goals are because they're big and they're lofty, and that's great, but we can get so wrapped up in what those goals are that we lose sight of the bigger picture. And what it's really about is going back to enjoying the journey, being present, making progress every day, little bit by little bit. We're not gonna, move a mountain in a day. It's gonna be boulder by boulder, by staying consistent, by taking time out for yourself, by taking time to process emotions and journal, because you don't want to get in that rut of just going through the motions like a rat on a wheel, hamster wheel, type of thing. If we get into that rut, we're just going to blow on through and miss so much learning along the way, miss so much growth along the way, and miss those red flags of things that maybe we need to change. Maybe we need to pivot. Maybe we need to pivot a business goal. Maybe something's not working. Maybe we need to take some time for ourselves because our health is suffering because of how hard we're pushing ourselves. Maybe we need to take time to spend with a loved one because we're not showing them the attention that they need. So again, just a sense of mindfulness in this is going to go such a long way, because ultimately how we live our lives on a day-to-day basis, it really just comes back to identity. We're making choices. We are choosing to believe a certain way. We are choosing to view the world a certain way, and that is reinforcing our values and our identity. It's the story that we're telling ourselves. So when we have awareness around that, we can make sure that we're checking in on a regular basis to make sure that that story we're telling ourselves is still valid, is still serving us. Because the worst thing is to be stuck in a story that's no longer serving you. I can speak from experience with this. In relation to the book, I told myself that I wasn't good enough, the book wasn't good enough. The world, there's so many books out there. Who needs, another one? It's those kind of limiting beliefs that I was telling myself that kept me from pursuing my dream for so many years. And by doing some of this work, I was able to chip away at that and finally get to the point where I was brave enough to take action and to put the book out there. So I can see now on the other side of that how much there's so much more growth, there's so much more life on the other side of that. So it doesn't mean that it's not scary. It is. But as we all know, courage is not the absence of fear. It is just taking action while afraid. And that's my prayer for you, that you would continue to have courage in your own life to face some of these things that you can very easily just kind of stick your head in the sand and want to avoid dealing with. But I promise you, if you take the time to deal with some of these emotions, take a hard look at the story that you're telling yourself. What are these identity habits that you're holding on to that are no longer serving you? And definitely, I think there's a lot of power in the Enneagram, because we can really dive into what those core motivations are for a lot of people in these different categories. Like I said, as a helper, as a helper, a core motivation is me wanting to serve other people to a fault, because I'm getting self-worth out of being loved and liked by others. And I know that that's ultimately not true, but it can be easy to fall into that trap for me and anyone else that would identify as a 2 on the Enneagram. So by being aware of it, I can kind of stop that in its tracks and learn that my self-worth is not in how others view me, how others like me, all of those things. So I encourage you to spend some time today to reflect on the story that you're telling yourself, and definitely encourage you to try the exercise of going out, being in nature, somewhere beautiful that you just really resonate with hey, you could try it for 2 hours, put your phone in your car, and just be present with yourself and see what comes up for you. Thanks for joining me on another episode of Be Your Own Hero podcast. I love you guys. I appreciate you. And we're on this journey together, and we're all growing together, and there's no right or wrong. The only thing that's important is just, taking another step in that direction every day. Catch you next time. Bye.